All right. To see you, Miss Lazarus, and Miss Cook, and other people who hopefully will come. We'll see. There we go. Okay, good to see you all again on this last week of October. There's Ms. Durant. Last week of October. A little over a month left, right? Right? Maybe?
Yeah, month and stuff.
November starts a new special month. I'll be talking about Catholic saints of a certain heritage. Does anyone remember what November is dedicated to? Yes. Anyways, is anyone going to dress up, come to your classes on Thursday and anything? Nothing? Maybe? I might. I might. If the spirit moves me. And if anyone were to, I don't know, wear something Halloweeny or festive, I might give them 3 extra credit points to their final grade. I might, yes. Probably would. If the person, presented himself or herself. We'll see what happens. See who's listening to me and who's not. Anyways, violence. Yes. When am I going to get through violence? Well, I talked a lot about religion, so it stands to reason. I should talk a lot about the second aspect of the course, which is violence. But I do want to get to actual people talking about religion and violence. But, all right, where did I stop? Causes of violence, intent of violence. We're structural. Oh, I was talking about structural violence. All right. I think I said enough about structural violence. I can move on to the causes of violence. What causes people to kill themselves or harm themselves? Okay. I gave you the definition. There's Galton. Okay. Okay. And structural violence. Yes. And I talked about that. Causes of violence. Well, the number one cause is being poor, apparently. Poverty. That's the World Health Organization lists poverty as linked to all forms of violence. I don't know if that's because people who are poor are necessarily more violent. I guess maybe the frustration aggression hypothesis. You're frustrated because you never have any money to do anything or get what you want, even basic things like food or shelter and stuff like that. So maybe that makes someone violent. I don't know. Anyways, poverty, social isolation, not being around people. What else? Cultural norms, violent culture. Oh yes, I can agree with that. Having I lived in a third world country, Papua New Guinea, for 9 months, and yes, tribal warfare was still an active occurrence from week to week and month to month. Someone did something to someone else who's a member of a certain tribe, so now the whole tribe has to back the person up and go attack the other tribe. Yes, and that's seen as perfectly legitimate. It's part of their culture. So cultural norms, alcohol and drug abuse. Okay, yeah, because alcohol and drugs are, cause us to lose control. They mess with our minds and stuff like that. They don't mess with our nervous system, but, our perceptions of things. So a person who's, drunk or having a bad trip or something can lash out and be violent. And finally, access to weapons. All right, so if you have the tools there, a gun, a knife, something like that, sledgehammer, if it's present, you might want to use it if you're in the frame of mind to do violence to somebody. So access to weapons, especially firearms like guns. Yes, these are the main causes of violence, or the risks of poor violence, I should say. But poverty I have in big letters and bold and underlined because poverty is linked with all these forms of violence. All of these can cause social isolation, abuse of drugs in various forms, having the weapons, present, your culture telling you you need to, don't turn the other cheek. Someone slaps you, then it's a fight to the death or something. Add in poverty, and that just makes these worse or more prevalent. Well, what is poverty? I have a definition here. I'm hoping I put it on the PowerPoint. There's poverty. All right. Poverty, being poor, comes from the Latin word pauper, which is based on another Latin word paucus, which means little or few. So if you have little of something, you are poor. Let me get rid of this. I don't even know why this is on. I mean, the touch thing I turned off. So where did this come? Well, that's not. Why do garbage? Interactivity. Touch thing here. Touch turn. Oh, turn off touch. All right. Let's turn it back on. See if it works. No, does nothing. Diddly. Diddly squat. Can't get this. There's got to be an easier way, Ms. Krause. Let's try that. All right. Yes. Violence. Back to violence. Anyways, Ms. Cook, paucus, little or few. To have little or few of something is to be poor. From the verb pario, which means, well, it really means birth. It's the postpartum, yes? Or antepartum. Any of you doing nursing stuff, and or you, your sister or your mom's been pregnant, or gone through a pregnancy. You have different forms of pario. This verb partum, we usually call postpartum, means after bearing, after the birth. Or is it antepartum or what's pre? No, it's not prepartum. Is it antepartum for when a woman's in the process of giving birth, or not process, but about to give birth? Don't all jump in to help. Prepartum, okay. But then there's another one. No, not prenatal. Thank you, but no, it's using partum as well, but it's in part two, when a woman is in the process of giving birth. Okay, she's got her legs up in the stirrups, and the doctors and the nurses are all there, and they're getting ready for the little head. They're looking for the head to come out. In part two, okay, from this verb pario, to bring forth, to produce, to bear. So bear, pario. Okay, sounds similar, Indo-European, right? And basically the same language family, so similar sounds. To bear something, bear a child. Okay, what does that have to do with being poor? I don't know. Miss Colonna, it's just where the word paucus is based on, okay? Bringing forth. I guess if you bring forth not very much, you're poor. Research shows that previous exposure to violence in the home is usually associated with being a victim of violence later on or a perpetrator, which to me sounds like obvious, isn't it? You know, if you've experienced violence before, I guess you'd be prone to do it to others. And I guess also you'd be more likely to accept it if it's been inflicted on you already. So, World Health Organization, I'm like, tell me something I don't know. But okay, kind of stating the obvious there. So, Dr. Dunn, what does all of this tell us about religion and violence? Okay. Talked about what violence is, some forms of violence, some causes of violence. Um, what does it tell us about religion and violence? Oh, uh-oh. That's weird. Well, we'll talk about that. uh, that's what we're here for, right, Mr. Saunders? That's what I'm getting paid for. So I better think of something fast. Take a sip of coffee, Miss Lazarus. Hmm?
Where's this last one?
Well, I'm gonna talk about that question. Let me go. All right, let's go back to our. So, Dr. Dunn, what does all of this tell us about religion and violence? Well, notice that in the whole discussion, and this is not because I edited it out, but you know, in the whole discussion, and most of which I've been basing most of the statistics and the ideas have been based on the World Health Organization study, the World Report on Violence and Health, which was put out in 2002. So you can look at my footnotes if you want. Okay, so a lot of it comes directly from that. But nowhere in the report does the World Health Organization identify religion or religious belief as a risk factor. Have you noticed that? And yet that's kind of like what we always hear, right? Especially, if a person's very religious, watch out. Especially if they're a certain kind of religion, watch out. Like Islam, right? People have this idea of Islam as a very violent religion. Have you read the Sam Harris chapter yet? Looked at, sir, you're too honest. You don't move your head. If you don't lie. I'm not saying you should lie and be like, oh yes, but just looked up. Actually, I mean, Miss Ying, I learned this a long time ago. That's the way people think I know stuff. I don't say things. I don't impress people with impressing by not saying things. They think I know things. I don't. They don't know that. Hopefully you read the chapter from Sam Harris's book, The End of Faith, which he wrote after, like he even says, he wrote it like the day after September 11th, the attacks on September 11th. It was his response to those attacks. I don't know, when I was listening to it, which, if you don't want to read it, here's a little, I don't know if we're still using these words, a life hack. Are we still using this word? Or is this passe now? We're not saying hacks anymore. It's a life hack. I don't know if the spider likes coffee. Is that coffee? I don't know. Oh, it's just water. We got a new little kitten in our family, and she apparently likes coffee. Sure. Good for her. They're gonna chat like coffee. It's coming for you, Miss Lazarus. Sorry about the delay. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh yes, Sam Harris. I thought, like, here's a little hack. Just you can take the file, the PDF file, you OCR it. You know what OCRing is, right? Optical recognition of the letters and stuff. So that it can be read by a computer or scanned or whatever. And then you just copy the words, put it into a document file, or just a PDF. You put it on your phone. You have apps that will read things for you. Yes. There are apps on your phone that can be on your phone, right? Google Play, you go on Google Play, and it also has some free apps that read text out to you while you're driving to school, especially if you have a long drive, an hour or so. You turn it on and just listen to it. Problem solved. Assignment finished. But I was just like thinking, listening to this chapter or reading it, wouldn't this way. I'm like, I don't know. I wonder if, I don't know, Harris, it was a topical book, I guess. He should have waited a few years before he wrote the book because, I don't know, it seems like he wrote it in anger. And he says in the book that, I'm not trying to attack Islam. Okay, you're not trying to attack it, but you seem to mention it quite a bit as a violent religion, inherently violent religion, which it may be. That's a conversation I think we could have. Not all, religions have different histories. Okay, some maybe don't come from a place of violence, but then devolve into violence. I can think of my own religion, Christianity. The founder of Christianity, Jesus of Nazareth, said very clearly to his followers not to respond violently to those who do violence to you. If someone wrongs you, no matter how many times, you're supposed to forgive them, and even do good to them. But if you follow the history of Christianity for any length of time, for the first few centuries, Christians were pretty committed to that principle until they got into power. Power, Mr. Ruddle. That changes things. When you're no longer the powerless, but got the power. Yeah. Like in Lord of the Rings, where Gollum is like, I get the ring, and then I be master. He doesn't follow Frodo anymore as master. He takes the ring from Frodo. He kills Frodo and gets the ring, and he's the master. The Christians were in the driver's seat. And you think that way. Oh, all of a sudden we had all sorts of excuses for why violence was not just necessary, tolerable, but even righteous. God will. Islam is, if you take world religions with me next semester, if any of you are thinking of doing a religious studies minor, do a major that's going to get you a job, Ms. Rogers. I have no problem with that. Maybe do a minor in something that's kind of interesting. Maybe it will give you some. I know religion isn't interesting, but I try to make it interesting. That's what. Anyways, I could see an argument being made that although Islam, the word, does have a connection with the word salam, peace, peacefulness, but it's more like submission. You're at peace with God because you submit to God. You do what God wants. And there is, a tradition of violence embedded in Muhammad, the prophet, and stuff like his teachings and his actions. He didn't turn the other cheek to his enemies. He got on a camel and went to war, because they used camels. They were really riding horses for the most part. Okay, that's part of the history. Be honest about it. I wouldn't try, be honest about it, I think. It happens, all right? So religions are different. Not all religions are the same. Some religions are not so prone to violence at all. Buddhism doesn't have a tremendous history of massacring and violence. Buddhism. It doesn't mean that Buddhists aren't violent. They can be. There has been Buddhist um, justifications of violence amongst Buddhists before, but generally, no. It's pretty clear about non-harming is a major tenet, non-harming anything, yourself and other forms of life. Um, and because to do so, gives you bad karma, which ruins your afterlife. It ruins your next future life that you'll come back as. Okay? So if you're willing to accept that as a Buddhist, that, by killing or doing something that's harmful, accepting the karma that you're going to have to work off, maybe certainly in this life, hopefully in this life, but certainly in the next life, you're willing to accept the suffering that's going to come in that life because of it. All right, well, go with God, my friend. But if you don't, then you avoided it all. So that's a good thing. That's where religion is kind of like acting as a control. It's controlling people, scares them in a way. Don't do this, or you get all this tons of evil, bad karma that will weigh you down for, who knows, 10,000 future lives while you pay it off. Or in Christianity, our equivalent is hell. Scare the little kiddies with hell. Don't do that or you'll go to hell. But usually we get focused on, like, I don't know, masturbation or something. Don't masturbate. It's a mortal sin. You'll go to hell. When's the last time you heard, when's the last you heard anyone say that? No one says that anymore. But, don't be a hater, I guess. Don't hate people. Don't be a racist or something. That's a sin. Go to hell. But how often do you hear someone say, like, no, don't kill other people. Don't respond with violence. You'll go to hell. I didn't hear anyone say that after 9/11, even the Catholic bishops. Oh, because I was alive then. You guys weren't alive. I don't think so. 2001? Not alive. It's not weird. No Ruddle. And now there's Ruddle.
Well, there was one.
Oh, there was. Were you in the womb at the time?
The last name still exists.
Oh, that's right. But I mean you, Jacob, right? Yeah, there's Jacob, no Jacob, Jacob. No Jacob, Jacob. Right? Jacob, right? Yes. Weird. The mystery of life. Right? Ms. Lazarus. But yeah, I was alive then. I don't remember any Catholic bishop saying, forgive and forget. Well, that's not true. One of them had the guts to say something like that after September 11th. Who was it? Was it, what's his name? Was it the Archbishop of New York? What's his name? Not Dolan. I think it was Dolan who's there now. Guy before him, but I don't remember the guy before him. Cardinal, Irish guy. I grew up with him with most of my life. Cardinal, Mick somebody. Anyway, O'Connor. That's right, Cardinal O'Connor. But I don't forget his first name. And then after him, well, maybe it was Dolan who succeeded him, but I don't think so. Well, anyways, one American bishop did say something about forgiving and stuff like that. But he was out of the country. He was, I think, visiting the UK and was quoted by a reporter saying, once it got back to here, people kind of let him know where the bishop was supposed to stand on the issue of forgive and forget in the case of September 11th. Okay? So religion and violence. All right. But nevertheless, religion is not identified as a risk factor. So where is this coming from? Is this coming from Harris's own bias? And not just Harris. Well, and I guess in a little bit I'll put on the interview with Christopher Hitchens, who also decided to write a book after September 11th called God is Not Great. Guess which religion he's going after? Islam. But he, is basically a general screed against all religion, not just Islam. But Islam was the main thing because of September 11th. But But where is it rooted in reality then? If the World Health Organization doesn't think religion is a risk factor, why do we have it? Again, I've asked this before, other than me getting paid this Kelowna, why is there even a course about religion and violence? Why not politics and violence? How many courses are we giving on politics and violence? We have the communist massacres in the Soviet Union and Maoist China and Cambodia and Vietnam. Maybe not massacres in Vietnam, but oppression. The French Revolution, brotherhood, freedom, and equality. Yeah, that's great until they start chopping off heads. Bring back the guillotine. Yeah, okay. Political. How many classes do we have about politics a month? But religion is a problem, even though it's not a risk factor. Okay, I thought that was interesting. Instead, there are other kinds of things that motivate violence. First, as I said, the most influential thing is poverty. Not religious belief, not your politics, Not even necessarily, I guess, if you've been exposed to violence. But if you're poor, if you have these things and then throw poverty into the mix, then violence can become an issue. So what role does religion play? I'm not absolving religion. I've mentioned that, I already mentioned in the class today about examples of Christianity and Islam and other religions being violent in some ways. But what role does religion play? That's what I want to know. I think it becomes a motivator to the extent that religion gives voice to or crystallizes in some way a person's previous feeling of hopelessness or anger. As with anything. Same thing I think happens with politics. People are already, I don't think that generates necessarily, like a person might ask the question, like, where would a Hitler come from? Where would someone like Adolf Hitler come from? Or any kind of dictator, Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union. Or anyway, just any person who leads other people to, gathers followers and leads them to do violence. Okay? I would say that there's already feelings there that the person or the religion or the politics are giving voice to. You're already angry. And then you get made angrier, like the politician taps into that. Now, you don't own New York City. The people do, which implies that people are disenfranchised, America used to be great. We have to make it great again. Which means people aren't happy that they don't feel like America is as good as it used to be, whatever that was. So I think the feeling is probably already there. And then you tap into it. That feeling of anger. Or hopelessness. Say in the case, if you've listened, maybe some of you have listened to, I think I asked you to listen to it, Karen Armstrong, her video talking about religion and violence. Well, there's a reading from her, but did I give you a video? I think I might have given you a video as well. This woman, Karen Armstrong, who's just a thinker. I guess you could say she's a scholar. But anyways, she's written a bunch of books on religious stuff, and one of them was about religion and violence. And hopelessness is a major factor, for example, in, she was talking about Palestinian suicide bombers. Why do they do what they do? I don't know that she was justifying it. And suicide bombing did not start with religious people. It actually started with, I didn't know this until she says that it started with the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka. They were separatists in northern Sri Lanka, the country of Sri Lanka, which is an island off the coast of India, a big island. And they wanted to have, their own country in the north. So they came up with this idea of strapping explosives to themselves and blowing themselves up. And then it spread out to other groups. And it ended up, I know people associate Islam and Muslims and Palestinians with suicide bombings and stuff like that. But it really started all the way all over in India or Sri Lanka, more specifically. And it was political violence. It had nothing to do with religion. It was political violence. Um, so how does it come, to be used by a religious group? Well, in the case of the Palestinians, Armstrong identified that idea of hopelessness. No one, they look around, a Palestinian looks around, I'm in one big cage, like the Gaza Strip or something, which is basically what it is one big open prison, one big cage. You can't go in or go out. You're there, you're stuck. You feel like you're oppressed, but no one else is going to help you. No one in the world seems to care. You're hopeless. So you've got to do something. Well, what are you going to do? And if you throw religion in, I think religion then gets thrown into the mix. You have, ideas in Islam that were already there. I'm not saying the violent ideas weren't already there, but you have ideas there of warfare in defense of Islam. Okay, so are you defending more Islam or are you defending Palestinians? Or do the two kind of start getting muddled together? You know what I'm saying? Islam and your political goal of freedom for your people. All right. La, da, da, da. Throw in the fact that you can get weapons and that can escalate. Weapons certainly seem to escalate the risk factor for violence. But for people like Christopher Hitchens and also Sam Harris, their argument is that religion is also an escalator. Religion, an escalator. I can't do it that well anymore because I'm so old and my legs are so sore that I fall over. But religion is like, having a gun present, during a fight or a baseball bat, it suddenly escalates the situation. Who's gonna take the baseball bat and use it against the other person you're fighting with? And religion can seem to be also like that. It can exacerbate that, okay? It's not just like if you're a Palestinian, it's not just that you hate the Israelis, but you hate the Jews. It spreads out to it's not just a political thing, an Israeli, a member of the country of Israel, but it's now it becomes, it pours over into religion as well, and that maybe intensifies it even more. Because then you start dumping on the whole history of Judaism. This is whose land is this? Is this our land or their land? Did God give it to us? Well, God gave it to the Jews, so it's our land, so we have every right to be here. Yeah, but God gave us a revelation through Muhammad, it supersedes yours, so now it's ours. And so now it's making it worse, you might say, Ms. Haran. I'm right there with you, Ms. Haran, but I got to keep moving. It makes it worse. Okay, but that still doesn't mean religion's to blame. Okay, there are a lot of things that can make an argument worse. You might just have a simple disagreement with someone, but you can always bring in something that makes it worse. But I just think we have to be aware of that because religion is something that's so closely held by people. My problem for people like, say, Hitchens or Sam Harris is that they then go on to blame religion for the pre-existing conflict that religion did not create, but was not maybe pulled into, right? Harris mentions it, Hitchens mentions it. It's not really a relevant example anymore, but the war in Northern Ireland. Know about that or no, because it's not nothing's going on. But when I was growing up, it was throughout the 80s and the 90s. There were people blowing stuff up in Northern Ireland. Irish, mostly, they were always, they usually identified as Irish Catholics, which they weren't. Sinn Féin, this political group in the Irish Republican Army. Catholics blowing up Protestants and Protestants killing Catholics and so on. And it was, a religious war. Well, it's more of a political war. free Northern Ireland and take it away from the British, who had taken it 1,000 years ago. so, so you're dealing with grievances that, are a millennium old, right? But, in the 1900s, the Irish rebelled against the English in the 1940s or something. And the English were supposed to leave and say, okay, we'll leave finally. But they didn't leave. They left most of the island of Ireland, but they decided at the end, no, we're going to keep the final, third of your island up here where, we have power and we won't give it back. We're not giving that back. So unless you're going to go to, the Irish had two choices, accept a peace deal and just move on, or go into a war with the United Kingdom. They decided not to go to war, just move on. Except for those, who were in Northern Ireland, because they oppressed those who wanted to be part of the Republic. The British were not, they were in charge, but they were not, they were brutal. The Ulster Constabulary really oppressed Catholic. If you were Catholic, Irish Catholic, then you were definitely second and third class. You couldn't go to the universities. People were poor, and maybe kept poor in these colonna. So we get issues of structural violence, keeping them poor, not allowing them to go to universities, get an education, not allowing them to move around in society. And so eventually you had militias starting to form to liberate Northern Ireland from British control. But it was more political. They were I remember the leader of the group, this political party Sinn Féin, which is Irish for we ourselves, we the people. It's their version of we the people. He was a Marxist. He was an atheist. He was a socialist. He had no religious bone in his body. He was very clear about that. His attempt to get rid of the British was simply political. They were oppressors who didn't belong there. It wasn't their island. They invaded it way back when. So get out. So how did it become a Catholic Protestant issue? Well, people like Harris, this is where I think people like Harris and Hitchens are a little bit dishonest. I think they're using that aspect of it and ignoring the broader political aspect of it. Yeah, if you were Catholic, you were seen to be a Republicanist. So you were against having the monarchy in the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom. Okay. Most Irish Protestants in Northern Ireland were in favor of the monarchy and keeping it as part of the UK. All right. So that's kind of like where the fault lines split. So religion was a factor. Which religion? Okay. There might have been Irish Catholics who were perfectly fine being part of Northern Ireland. And there might have been Irish Protestants who were like, no, it should be part of the Republic. I don't want to be part of the United Kingdom. All right, fine, whatever. But that's kind of how it's split. And then I think this is one place where I think people like Harris and Hitchens really exploit the religious element when it's more political than religious. Because the Catholic bishops in Ireland were very clear that the people who were blowing things up, especially of the Irish Republican Army, who calling themselves Catholics, were excommunicated. They were committing a grave sin. They were killing non-combatants. They were killing, even if they were killing soldiers and police officers, this was not good. So the religious leaders were saying very clearly, the authorities were saying, no, this is not it. This is not Christianity, what you're doing. So stop it. Otherwise, we'll kick you out of the church. But Hitchens and Harris never mentioned that aspect of it. They never mentioned the statements of the Irish bishops condemning all of these actions and excommunicating members of the Irish Republican Army that were doing these things. So I would say that each of these risk factors, like poverty, the presence of weapons, feelings of hopelessness or anger, that are frustrated feelings of hopeless or anger, I think they're more determinative of how religion will be used or brought into play rather than religion is generating these things. It doesn't seem to me that religion itself is the actor causing these situations, like religion's making people poor or isolating people socially. Maybe. I mean, if you're a member of some cult. Did I tell you I'm starting a cult? Yeah, I'm in the process. You're my guinea pigs. You're my test case, Mr. Lynch, for my cult. Centered around me, of course, Mr. Rand, because it wouldn't be, a cult to my benefit if it was centered on me. I haven't come up with a name for it yet. The Maddies. Ooh, the Maddies. I already know one of them. Well, there are two planks of my cult that I've established. Number one is that my followers have to bring an Indian. That's how they show their obedience. Everyone has to own a cat. We all have to have cats. Not that I don't love dogs, but cats. Cats and Indian food, Mr. Saunders. But it won't be a violent cult. It won't be a violent. I'm not going to ask people to, I'm not going to abuse people in some way. Maybe shun it. That's be the worst of it. Nothing violent. All right, so it's in its beta stage. It's cooked. It's not red, or maybe it's not even in beta. It might be in the gamma stage.
I don't think that anybody starts a cross and
You don't think so? Well, I'm telling you specifically, there's not going to be any violence. I don't want it to be a violent cult. None. And I don't think I'll isolate people. We're not going to go out to like Idaho and all live in some compound. I don't think I'll isolate.
members does something violent and blames you. They blames the code.
Well, they shouldn't. Well, they do something violent. Well, I guess they're shunned. They're out. It's not supposed to be a violent cult. Indian food and cats. Those are the two main foci that I've come up with. And as I said, you're my lab. See what happens. See how many of my students I can lasso you. Nobody's listening. Come on. Anyway. But if I did have a cult, and like you were saying, you don't usually start out saying you're violent, but a lot of cults are self-isolating, aren't they? Yeah, cut you off from your family, from other people. You have only basically one view of the world and what's going on. And then people start maybe being, as they say, radicalized. And they become violent. They become protective of their cult, protective of their place where they are. They don't want any outsiders coming in. Don't talk outside. Outsiders are bad. Okay? Social isolation. La, da, da, da. So, but I don't see necessarily religion being a factor in that situation. Necessarily. It could be. It could be. You stay away from the world because the world is evil. It's of the devil or something. And our community is of God. Okay? So you hate the world, but you love the brotherhood or the sisterhood, that the group you're a part of. And I would also argue that many religions actually limit these risk factors. If you are talking about risk factors, for example, I mentioned Buddhism has a very strong tradition of nonviolence. It's one of the 5 basic laws or precepts of being a Buddhist, that you vow yourself to, that you will not harm any living thing. Doesn't mean Buddhists have never done that, but it's a basic precept of Buddhism. And I mentioned Jesus Christ. Jesus, very clear about nonviolence to his followers. So to me, that's limiting it because, what's the problem with, say, Christian violence? Well, it's hypocritical, isn't it? Jesus has turned the other cheek, but you Christians don't do that. So you're hypocrites. You say you believe this, or you believe in this person and his religious teachings, but you don't actually follow them. When it comes to a crisis where you have to make a decision between follow Jesus's teaching or follow just what everyone expects in society, You know, Christians usually follow what everyone expects. You know, so you drop bombs on your enemies just as any atheist would drop a bomb on his enemy. You know? But that's the limit. The religion, you can't blame that, but then that's not Christians doing it. That's bad Christians. They're not following the limiting factors of their religion. Jesus says you're not supposed to do these things. So the religion is saying, don't do it. Or violence can be reinterpreted in some religions. Violence is accepted, it's there, but religion neutralizes it and reinterprets it. Think about Sikhism. Sikhism. You know what Sikhism is. I'm sure you've seen Sikhs. There we go. Still lost it. Sikhism, the religion of Sikhism, comes from India. It was founded around the 1600s in India. You've probably seen Sikhs around here. I'm not going to try and stereotype, but if you've ever seen an Indian man who's walking around with a big turban, a wrapped turban on his head, a long beard, you've seen some of these people? I have, so I'm assuming you guys, unless you're like monks and nuns and staying in your convents and monasteries, I'm assuming you've been out. No, you've never seen anyone like this with a turban? A headdress, big headdress, a man, long beard, also long hair, but you can't tell because it's wrapped up in the turban. Yeah, I mean, see, that's part of their religious dress. It's like a Jew wearing a yarmulke, or Hasidic Jews wearing big black hats and stuff like that, or Muslim women wearing the veil. Okay, in Sikhism, when you're a Sikh man, you take 5 promises, or there are 5 requirements. One of them is you don't cut your hair. You wear, so they wear the turban, and they have beards. But others of these requirements are they have to have somewhere on their person a sword or a dagger, a knife. A kirpa, it's called. The 5 Ks. There are 5 words that begin with the letter K in, I think, Hindi. The language is Hindi. And don't ask me what they all are. I just wrote down kirpa. But the 5 Ks. One of them is kirpa, which means a knife, or like a sword. And yeah, from the ancient days of carrying a sword in self-defense. And that's what a Sikh man is supposed to do. Somewhere on his person, he's supposed to have his kirpa, a knife or a dagger that he uses in the defense of those who are being harmed or oppressed. He's obligated to intervene when he sees someone being unjustly treated and even do violence. So here, the sword of war or violence is reinterpreted by the religion. Now it's a sword or a dagger to be used in the fight against injustice. Not just simple violence and killing, but to defend those who are being harmed. So in some cases, religions reinterpret violence. It's still part of the religion, but it reinterprets what the violence is meant to be. All right. My little friend. All righty. Let's go on to, I should go on to Sam Harris, but let me have Christopher Hitchens. Second here. Okay. There we go. Oh yeah, Christopher Hitchens. Good. On track, but not on track. And then Karen Armstrong. All right, God willing, I have the video. I'm pretty sure I have the video on my YouTube channel, but I don't know if I have it here in my folder. But let's see. Religion and violence. Oh, here we go. Vids. Nope. Nope. That's weird. Well, it's not weird. It's just, all right, that's fine. Let's go to YouTube. Where are we here? Oh, actually, all right, good. You never know what's gonna, because I don't have any ad block or anything, so you never know what's gonna come up on YouTube these days. I apologize if you see something untoward. I put in Matthew Dunn, but I won't come up. Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. So let's see. What can I put in? Encounter from another course, but let's see if it comes up. There we go. Use this to get to my channel, my videos, and hopefully. Does anyone notice like the search function in YouTube sucks? Is it? Like I have videos that I know I have, but if I search for them with the search function, it won't find them. There we go. Okay, good. Okay, this is a shorter interview from years ago. This guy, Christopher Hitchens, who died in 2011. So you can see that this video has to be, well over like 15 years ago. I'm glad I have it because I don't think if you weren't on my site, then you wouldn't be able to find it. What was I going to say? And it's a shorter interview. I think I have have a longer interview on Canvas. I might, or at least a link to a talk that he gives about religion. Certainly you have it in your readings from his book, God is Not Great, which we're going to talk about in this interview. Yeah, I might show it in class. But anyways, this still gives a good summary of his point of view. All right, so this is Anderson Cooper, if you don't know, who's a reporter with CNN. And this guy was on there to talk about his book.
Well, before the break, we were talking about a firestorm between Mitt Romney and Reverend Al Sharpton. Sharpton says his remarks have sparked the storm on one end at Romney, who is Mormon. He says they were directed at the man he was debating at the time, Christopher Hitchens, an author and outspoken atheist. The title of his latest book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, pretty much sums up Hitchens' view of all things religion. I talked to him recently. The book, God is Not Great. What is your problem with religion? I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times. I just want to read something from the book. You said, religion poisons everything as well as a menace to civilization. It's become a threat to human survival. Why do you see religion as purely a destructive force?
It can't keep itself to itself. It has to go out and try and convert others, try to impose itself on others. For example, if you take one case, the present Pope says, okay, AIDS in Africa is bad, but condoms much worse. That's going to mean a lot of people will die for a dogma of this kind. President Pope is also saying we should teach children about hell all over again. That's ruined the lives and childhoods of millions of people. It's a wicked thing to be saying. Now, it's a falsehood as well.
But can you be...
The cartoonists in Denmark can't do their job without death threats, believable ones, serious ones, attempts to sabotage the whole Danish economy. Settlers on the West Bank are trying to bring on the Messiah and try for Armageddon and bring on the end of the world. They won't leave us alone. So I think that it's time that people who are secular and skeptical banded together a bit and said, enough already.
Do you see any benefit to believing in a God?
I don't know.
Positive impact on society.
I like religious music, and there are several religious poets, John Donne and George Herbert, I suppose would be the main ones. Without whom I couldn't manage Gothic architecture. Not so much devotional painting, I must say, but that's cultural. And we owe religion a lot in that respect for art. And of course, we all have our transcendent moments, but I'm not going to be told what to do by people of so-called faith. And I do think we have a perfectly good alternative tradition. Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Albert Einstein, Spinoza, the rationalists, the Greeks. Science is just as beautiful, if not more so.
I want to read something else from the book. Religion comes from a period of human prehistory where nobody had the smallest idea what was going on. It comes from the bawling and fearful infancy of our species and is a babyish attempt to meet our inescapable demand for knowledge. There are, though, your view of religion seems to be the extremes or the fundamentalists in all faiths. Do you not see anyone who believes in rationality or reason or questions?
I'm not talking about the extremists, and people like Aquinas and Augustine, the great fathers of the church. had no idea of germ theory of disease, so they thought disease was a punishment. The plague was a punishment from God for wickedness, or sometimes it had been started by the Jews. They believed in astrology. They believed in limbo for the souls of unborn children. They had no knowledge of the cosmos at all. They didn't even know that the Earth goes around the sun. But we have minds, and so people will often prefer a conspiracy explanation to know it all.
And yet, though, today,
We had one to know it all, but now we've outgrown all that. We don't need it. My kids know more about the natural order than the Aquinas did.
and yet people still want religion in their life. They want a belief in their life.
I'm not trying to take it away from them. They mustn't think that they have any divine permission to intervene in mine. That's where the line will be crossed. And that's why I've written a book urging the secular to stick up for themselves more, in the confidence that there are many more of us than the religious people think.
Would the world be a better place without religion?
Certainly it would, yes. If such a thing were possible, I really have tried against myself in a way here. I know that that will never happen, and in some ways, I would miss it if it all went away. This is not only about all the most important things, where we come from, what's the meaning of life, what are our duties to one another, and so forth. I just think you can do this perfectly ethically without any appeal to the supernatural, and I think that's been proved repeatedly. You think of the character of people like Spinoza or Einstein, who are talking about morally exemplary people. As you think of the character of about half of the known popes, imams, mullahs, rabbis, and so on, you find the incitements to the most appalling evil and bigotry all over the place. Northern Ireland has just recovered today from what? Beginning to recover 25 years of too much religion.
The book is Scott is not great. It's incredibly well read, written, and no doubt will provoke a lot of thought. I appreciate it.
It's really nice to say so.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
All right. There it is. Well, you should be proud of yourselves. You just got hitch slapped. That's it. Anyway. Yeah. Anyways, that's what fans of Christopher Hitchens call it when getting hitch slapped when he brings down the hammer.
And he was debating at the time.
Okay. Anyways. All right. So what's going on here? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Two recent blunders. What do you think? Is he right? Is he wrong? Agree? Disagree? Yeah.
A little bit too radical, but like religion does some good things, does bad things. But like thinking that 100% without religion it will to a better place, wrong. There's like subjective where you can't really prove it, but there has been examples of religion showing people have like good wrong.
Okay. Do we have any test cases where religion has been taken away or actively suppressed and people have tried to weed it out or get it rid out of society? Haven't seen do we have any test cases?
Yes, you could say like all people saw religion work with
All right. Yeah, I should. Okay, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the Holocaust, they wanted to kill the Jews or kill the Jewish community, which is religious, I guess. Yes. I'm thinking more of like atheism or something. Like, he says secularism, but what he's talking about is atheism. Do we have any test cases of an atheistic society where people have tried to, like, okay, we don't need religion. No, religion won't even be a part. We'll actively get rid of it. Do we have any test cases? Huh? Not that you know? Does anyone know? one test case that exists about 90 miles off southern Florida. No? Not sure what exists 90 miles off of the coast of Florida, south. South, before you go south from Florida, you hit. Huh? Cuba. Cuba! Cuba! What is Cuba? What is Cuba? What kind of government? What kind of society? Country has no diplomatic relations with Cuba. Not really. We started up some like, nominal relations under President Obama, but I don't know what's happened with that under, well, Trump, his first administration, and then I don't know if Biden restored them. Why don't we have diplomatic relations with Cuba, or why haven't we for a long, long time? What's the government of Cuba? Lovely places. Don't know? Don't know? All right. We like the only, there's a class over there. We like the only other class. I don't hear anybody else. Did anyone like look up on your phone or your computer just to see maybe? Look, not keeping you off of you're obviously, Ms. Krause, not keeping people off their computers, right? Cuba. Thank you, Mr. Dobson. What do you know about Cuba, Mr. Dobson? Not much. Okay, well, so you know that it exists, you know where it is. Huh? Communist. They're communists. They're Marxist-Leninists in their political philosophy. Thank you, sir. That's fine. Wherever you learn the information is good. I'm just wondering, Mr. Gracie, if you knew this for like the last 5 minutes, why did you let me spin in the wind?
No, I was actually trying to think of it. I got it.
Sounds like that, Mr. Gracie. Okay. So that's its society, Marxist-Leninist, which is just a political economic philosophy where everything is held in common by the workers, the ones who do the work. Okay, there are no owners of the means of production. Okay, everyone owns the means of production, so everyone benefits. And so the government, usually in communist systems, is very centralized and stuff like that. With all sorts of committees, various committees and stuff like that, where people, there's common decision making. It's supposed to be really democratic. Doesn't seem to ever work that way. I don't know why, but it just countries where it's been tried, it always seems to turn into dictatorship. I don't know why. Anyways, no different in Cuba. Okay, Cuba has a dictator. One guy is basically in charge. He's the president of the Communist Party. Okay, but that doesn't say anything about religion necessarily. However, it is atheistic communism. It's professedly atheist. It's not like here where we have a Bill of Rights where the First Amendment says, the government, it's kind of atheist in a way, but the government doesn't tell you whether to believe that there's a God or not believe there's a God. Or if you believe there's a God, the government doesn't tell you how you should worship that God or not worship that God, right? There's freedom of religion. But in a place like Cuba, the government is very clear. It's atheist. They don't teach religion in the schools. They don't teach about religion in the schools. They teach science and everything, If you are religious, well, most people in Cuba are a lot of people belong to the Catholic Church. So what do you do with that? Well, you just don't talk about it. You keep it in the church. You keep it in the churches, but maybe you don't even go to church anymore because if they see you going to church, they think you believe in God, and so that can harm whether you get into university or something, or you get a job or something. I know I had a friend in the seminary who was from Cuba. I still have family in Cuba. And it was difficult. One of his cousins wanted to get into the medical school at the University of Havana, and they specifically asked during the interview process, do you believe in God? And you have to say no, you know. I'm Ukrainian Catholic, so a lot of the Ukrainians that I've known remember when the Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, which again was an atheist state, self-professed atheist. And the churches weren't closed, but people would stand outside the churches to see who would go in them on Sunday, so they could report them. Not that they would throw them into jail, but they might harass them a little bit, or they might find their application to university or to a certain job or something turned away. But as one of the women told me, she said when she was growing up in Ukraine, she's like, yeah, but the problem for the communists was that we were all believers. So, the teachers in our school had to stand outside the church to see who went in, but they would look at the ground so they couldn't see anybody. So they could truthfully say, I didn't see anybody from my school going in. Anyways. So there's a test case, Cuba. There's a test case of a religious-less society, not just a religious list that it developed naturally, but where the government actively is suppressing, say, you're not supposed to believe these things. Okay. How are the societies? Do you know about them? I should have made that part of a research. Maybe I should have made a research paper or something about that for the course. I'm not going to do it now. Don't worry, Ms. Colonna. Okay. But maybe I should, maybe in the future, if I do this again, who knows? Do people prosper in those countries or not? Do people feel free or not? China is probably the biggest example. Actively oppresses religion. There's the underground Catholic Church and there's the public Catholic Church. Because every religious group has to register with the government. You have to be approved by the government to exist. So you've got what's called the Patriotic Catholic Church, all of whose bishops have to be approved by the Communist Party. But then you have people who won't accept that, and they're part of the underground church, and, they get thrown in jail from time to time and stuff like that. But, it's kind of funny. You read, I was reading a statement, the Patriotic Catholic Church had some meeting or some, I guess their convention, their yearly convention. And someone translated the statement that they issued, at the end, you put out a little statement about what you've come to talk about and agreed on and things you're going to do and stuff. And it just read like a straight political statement from the Chinese Communist Party, Started out with all sorts of praise for, how much we owe the Chinese Communist Party and what gratitude we have for living in China and how great the Communist Chinese Party has made China, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like looking through the statement like, okay, Jesus, God. Okay, forget about Jesus. God. I wasn't finding it. I wasn't finding anything religious about it. And it's not just the Catholic Church, but Protestant churches, other Christian communities, Muslim communities, Jewish, if there are any Jewish communities, but other religions, it's the same thing. You register with the government, but it's not just registering with the government. The government almost kind of writes the script of what you can say in your churches to your people. When the government needs maybe some promotion of its ideas, maybe sometimes they literally write that script in code. All right. What else you got? What are things that you think about that Hitchens said? Anything strike you as interesting? Provocative? Right, wrong?
He said there's too much of it.
Yeah? How so?
A lot of things he said were just like kind of blatant, radical statements. So I would want him to get more depth.
Okay. They're radical statements. Radical in what way?
Like there weren't
You were half asleep?
statements he was making.
Woman's honest. I can't begrudge her that. I got you. Okay. Do you know if his statements were even true? I mean, he's rattling off a lot of names and events and things. Do you know necessarily that any of them was true or false or? Okay. I do. Well, because I'm supposed to know, right, Ms. Rogers, because I got to fill time. I better. Okay, yeah. He seems very sure of himself. But isn't that okay? Don't you want someone who's sure of himself? Yeah? All right. But radical, extreme, all right. You shouldn't let people, I mean, it sounds like a good slogan. You know, no religious person, if these people of faith are not going to tell me how to live my life. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I kind of agree, but what's the difference between them or the police or the government? A lot of people in my life tell me how to live my life. Why is it wrong when the person wears a collar? Well, the person's just a man, just a human being, male or female, just a human being. No, so are cops. But I better do what he tells me. You know, tells me to get out of the car. You know, yes, officer. What's the problem, officer? And as I was talking about our test cases, if I were, someone living in, say, Cuba, the government tells you all the time what you're going to do. You're told all the time. Forget about religion. Where are you going to work? We have needs here. Or you're going to go out to the camps, to not camps, camps, yeah, camps, the countryside and stuff, and you're going to work on farms for a number of years. That's what they do in Cuba, to kind of get you experienced with, the proletariat, which is a Marxist word for the poor people. But what it's like to really work, to be a worker, we're going to get you that experience for a few years. So you got to go out into the countryside and work. Yeah, we're going to tell you what to believe in school. Certainly going to lay it all out for you. And a lot of the education is anti-religious. Is that okay? Okay, yes, I see the time. God bless you all. I'll see you on Thursday. I'm trying, Ms. Rogers. Really? It's that bad? Have a good day, Mr. Glitch. All right. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Good day, Mr. Saunders. Have a good day, gentlemen. See you, Ms. Ying.